back to Inner Peace Better Health, where we explore the spaces between heartbreak and healing. I'm your host Shreya, and today's guest, Padmini Pandya, lives at the intersection of many worlds. A fourth generation East African Indian, raised across continents, a seasoned organizational psychologist, strategist, and soulful creator. Through love, loss, and life's unanswered questions, she learned to embrace one of the hardest human truths, finding peace without closure. Get ready to step into the uncomfortable, beautiful, and deeply personal liminal space of unresolved endings. Welcome, Padmini. I'm honored to have you on my show.
No, it's an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Padmini, most of us crave closure after loss. What have you learned about the nature of peace when closure simply isn't possible?
It took a long time. I should set the stage for what I'm referring to instead of talking about it just generally. A couple years ago, about 3 years ago now, my ex-husband passed away, and we had already been divorced for, about a decade. Um, it was a very easy divorce, I would say, at least like legally. There were probably a lot of things that were left unsaid. And I did not realize how ill he was, and frankly, we weren't in touch. We never had kids, so and I had moved to Asia, when we separated, so we were already on different continents, basically, from the beginning, and, we weren't that entangled. It was easy to untangle. So, many years had gone by, and I learned basically towards the end of his life that he was quite sick. And and I tried to reach out to him a number of times to talk to him and to see him. Um and and I couldn't. And I understand why. They were really at that point in time there was, I think there were a lot of things left unsaid, but so much time had passed already.
Yes.
Did they really need to be said? Sometimes things, if they're not said early on, are not worth as much later on.
Yes.
And and I understand why, particularly because he was so sick and knowing him, we were together for 9 years. I know him. And I know that he wouldn't have wanted me to see him in that state. That, his, me leaving had already really, really hurt him in a way I don't think anyone else has. And that wasn't my intention, but that was the result. And, um, you know, he he didn't want to deal with it, and I respected that. And and frankly, I don't know how I would have approached it anyway, even if he had wanted to see me. I didn't really have a plan after that. Um, but he passed away, and we didn't get any closure. And I don't know if we needed it, but I don't know what it would have or not have accomplished at that point in time, but it was really making peace with. I was sort of like the elephant in the room that, everybody knew that I had really broken his heart, and I I wanted to address that. I wanted to be accountable for that and say the things that I should have said years ago. And he didn't give me that opportunity, but it was fair. In a way, I think, like, I didn't give him a good enough explanation when I left, so he didn't owe me an explanation when he left. And really, it was almost like karmically, it just got tied up in a bow, and it was like to a certain extent, I got what I deserved. And I respected that, and I owned that. And my leaving our marriage had actually been so silent that it was, poetic justice in a way, that his leaving this earth was also very silent. And I have a lot of respect for silence. I have, when there's nothing really left to say, there is no reason to have any theatrics or drama. I am not that person. And I have left many situations quite quietly, silently, swiftly. And because there's nothing left to say. And I respected that. But it was like at the end of it, it was like when he passed away, I was relieved that he was no longer in as much pain as he had been. I was really, really relieved for him. It also broke my heart having kind of put together through certain people the last years of his life. It I never wanted that for him. And I would have showed up. If I had known that he was that sick, I would have showed up. And, it just, I think with time, I feel like also spiritually, I have had a lot of conversations with him. And, the pain I went through when he passed away was mine to own and mine to bear. And I did. And especially the first year after he passed away, it was brutal. I think I cried every day for a year. There was not one day when there weren't like tears streaming down my face. But, a really dear friend of mine in LA actually did this exercise with me that his therapist had actually done with him when his mother passed away. And we were basically in his car and he was like, say everything you wish you would have said. And I did. And there were tears streaming down my face, but I also, I addressed the whole situation. I also addressed why I had to leave, which was not just my own doing. He had a big role to play in that decision I made.
Yes.
And it was actually after that day that there was actually a massive weight that was lifted off me. And I'm not one for these weird exercises. Like, it's not, I am tapped in enough that I don't really go through like, production and procedure of something like that. But I underestimated how powerful that would be. And he's still, still a dear friend of mine. And he had seen me suffer a lot that year. And, yeah, and somehow on the other side of that, and I feel like I got messages from him as well throughout, the past couple years that like, I know he is in a much better place and I know he understands why it had to happen that way.
Yes. Yes. And that's such a
I did not
freeing.
expect to start crying with a stranger.
Yes.
Excuse me again.
That's absolutely fine.
Sorry. So
It's
there.
it's fine. It's fine. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Uh, that's such a freeing but unsettling thought also. So you have navigated deep personal loss across love, relationships, and even identity. How did your multicultural background shape your ability to sit with ambiguity and unresolved emotions?
Oh, I mean, I guess I had always, I've never been part of the majority of anything. I was always the minority among minorities among minorities. So I think I kind of grew up always in a fairly uncomfortable place, for better, for worse. But that toughens you up. That toughens you up a lot. And we moved around a lot when we were kids. I went to a number of different schools. And so you learn how to navigate in so many different types of schools with so many different types of kids. And it wasn't just moving countries. When we moved cities, states, schools, like there were big cultural shifts there too. I think how it ties back, your question is how it ties back really to death and
Yes.
loss.
Yes.
um I'm Hindu. I was raised Hindu. And so I think that has helped a lot. That has really grounded me at really my toughest times. I've really, when I've really only had myself to count on, I actually haven't been alone. Like I have been with God and I have been protected,
Yeah.
for a long time. And I think, understanding that, the 3D world is not all there is. And understanding that time is not as linear and literal as people try to make it out to be, and understanding that souls are not so just tangible and impermanent, that when you are connected to people, you are connected to people through multiple lifetimes and multiple timelines. And that, just them ceasing to be here in the 3D does not mean that they cease to exist. Your ancestors are watching over you, your grandparents, if they're not with us anymore, they are watching over you. Like, there are a lot of people, and your connection to them is not severed just because you can't touch them here. Because one day nobody will be able to, you'll pass away, I'll pass away, and nobody will be able to touch us either. But like, does that mean that, we were never here, or energy was never here, or that it disappeared? I don't think so.
Yes, yes. It's very powerful, the ability to hold multiple truths at once without collapsing into certainty or bitterness. That's so powerful. And grief without closure often creates a lingering emotional void. What practices or mindsets have helped you live alongside that void without letting it consume you?
Um, I mean, not the literal sense, like I exercise. I think we underestimate that. We underestimate the powers of our bodies,
Hmm.
and just that, like, moving energy through your body actually moves a lot of emotions as well. I do a lot of my thinking, when I'm doing certain exercises, and it's a different conversation if I'm swimming or if I'm doing yoga or something. But
Mm.
it that I work through a lot. I process a lot physically. And I think, I am I am always in my head. I am barely in the 3D. Like, I am barely in front of you. I am always in, like, my head and in the 5D. And I think I have really, time will help you process things. Sometimes, like, but you need to be, I think where the barriers lie when people have a hard time processing things is when they're not being accountable for their role in it, or when they don't want to understand karma. Karma is something everybody needs to understand. And if they understood karma, they would understand their role that they played in it. And then they wouldn't feel like such a victim. They would actually own their role. And because where you end up with people often has a lot to do with you. It's very easy to point the blame to other people. But when you actually learn radical acceptance and radical accountability and radical truth, that you are able to step out of that situation as far as humanly possible. Look at it a little objectively. And it's like, would I do things differently? Probably not. I actually probably wouldn't, aside from really speaking to him properly, us having a real closure conversation. But I did the best I could at the time with how I was emotionally equipped. And I had no malintent towards him. And we had a very, easy departure from one another. And I didn't ask and I didn't get anything. So it was like, I was conscious of keeping my karma as clean as possible. And I did. And I did it in the most respectful way I knew how, and in the easiest way I could possibly make it for him, and I did. And so, like, I'm also grateful to myself that I did it as best I could and I had the right intention, so I don't feel guilt. That's not something I really, that guilt, it wasn't there because I knew I did it the right, as best as I could, the right way I knew how. So I think when people get really honest with themselves,
Mm.
you will get to closure much faster because you will acknowledge your role that you played in it. And if you can take a step back, like, there was something, I almost had to laugh at how poetically just it was. At how, like, I got exactly what I deserved, and his departure was the emotional equivalent of my departure, and our karma was clean.
Yes. This such a powerful truth. And are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Because I have had time. I have had plenty of time to process this. This is why I can talk about it now because I've got distance and I've got closure.
Yes, yes, yes. That's wonderful. And Is it possible that some grief simply becomes part of who we are rather than something to fully heal from?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am a completely different person, 1,000%. Like all that grief will define you. And, there's personal grief of, like I still think about my grandmother every day. She passed away almost a decade ago.
Yeah.
But like there's not a day that doesn't go by. Like, and she defined me. Her life defined me, and her death had a massive definition on me and our whole family.
Mm.
Like all of that. And so there's that personal grief that you experience. Even when pets pass away, you have a
Mm.
completely different appreciation of
Yeah.
life and what love is. And like, did you do the best you could? Did you give them as good a life as they deserved? Like, did you protect and take care of them? People lose children. Uh,
Yes.
and that is under the best case, most stable societies. Take a look around the world, what people are
Mhm.
suffering through. Like, if that doesn't, the fact that like this can all exist on the same timeline, that at the same moment in time on Earth, people can be hanging out at the pool drinking cocktails, and people are inches away from their life, or people have buried loved ones, many loved ones.
Mm.
That that is staggering. And I think there's collective grief that, like, I'm sure, the world is experiencing right now. I think a lot of people are.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. That's so true. And as an organizational psychologist, you have seen how people handle unresolved tensions at work too. So do you
Yes.
see parallel so do you see parallels between personal grief and unaddressed conflicts in professional life?
I think it really depends on like how safely people can express themselves. The thing is, you can't draw complete parallels, because when you work for a company or you are part of an organization, everyone to a certain extent understands that they need to behave themselves,
Yes.
or, somebody is out the door. So I think there are far more rules and, structure. So in companies and in organizations, there's also a lot of like unsaid tension. Whereas perhaps in families, there is too much said tension. People should say less. And they don't. They don't hold back when they should. And the thing is, people realize, everyone should realize that, like, when something comes out of your mouth, it is permanent record. And an apology later on does not, it does not hold the same weight. You cannot redact things that you have said.
Mm.
In organizations, I think, that's when, like, if people start playing favorites, if there's then, sort of teams, if the bosses aren't paying attention, if there isn't some sort of like neutral referee, like,
Mm.
it's almost like everybody has to play fairly. And if everybody doesn't play fairly, then inevitably there will be tension in the system. And, sometimes a certain amount of tension is tolerable. It's not like all our families are smooth sailing either, but we make do and we get on with it. So it's like, and to a certain extent, it's like, is it about each other? Is it about yourself? Are you actually in competition with that person? Did they really do something you don't like? Or are you insecure? Is this more about your own capabilities, and that, you feel intimidated by somebody else? Like, there are 100 things that could be going on in people's minds, and maybe the situation was unfair. Maybe it's, sales territories have been assigned, unfairly, or, accounts change or stuff like that. Like, that is fair. That's legitimate. But like, then you need actually like a chain of communication that is fairly non-biased and fair. But like, that goes, in families as well. But, that is also, that's harder because that's just messy.
Yeah.
I think of anything like organizations, I someone stays and they figure it out, or somebody leaves. Like, it usually comes down to that.
Yes, yes. And that's such an important point, that whether personal or professional, unspoken pains always is there. So, for those listening who feel stuck in a place where their apologies never came, explanation never arrived, what is one first step they can take toward finding their own inner peace?
Um, I mean, this has happened to me a lot. And I think, there were many apologies I never received. And and I'm not a particularly confrontational person. If I don't like how somebody's moving, I leave. And I don't need to have I'm actually not that big on closure. Even though I know a lot of this is about closure, I'm actually okay without closure. My late ex-husband aside, like, I can go without closure. I think, but you need to realize how people behave has a lot to do with them. It doesn't have as much to do with you as you think. It might have to do with you in that you might trigger them in some way. They might be, you know, you might make them feel more insecure than they're willing to admit, and then they overcompensate. Or, there's always a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of insecurity. And then I think people think they can get away with things, and sometimes they do, but it's like, I don't know if they really calculate the long-term effects of, like, maybe losing a really good person from your life because you were too proud to say something. And and I think as the person who perhaps should have received that apology, realizing that it only has something to do with me. It doesn't have everything to do with me. This also has to do with the other person and their evolution and how honest they can be with themselves, how accountable they actually are with their own behavior and the role that they played. Like, there are a lot of variables that are involved in that. And so I think, like, to a certain extent, you have to, I think if you are, by and large, I have been at peace with my behavior. I've kept my hands clean. I've not done anything malicious. I have not, caused any drama. I have usually just left silently. And the people who I have left, I think basically I treated them very well. Like, I think most people get the best version they get what they deserve from me. So if they treat me respectfully and give love to me, like, I will give that back tenfold. Like, I adore the people who have taken care of me, and I would go to war for them. So it's not like I don't feel guilty. Once again, like, I don't feel guilty about my behavior. Whether or not I understand why they behave that way, people are crazy. I don't, like, half the time, I don't know. They're probably reacting to, like, mommy issues that, like, I don't know anything about. Like, who knows? Like, they have a bad relationship with their dad, and now, they're theatrical for years. Like, I have no idea. Like, that's for them and their therapist.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to, like, once you're at peace with how you behaved, I think that is all that's actually ever left. Like, do you respect yourself?
Mm.
Did you treat that person fairly? Were your intentions pure? And if you can say yes to all of that, you're good. Like, your karma is clean. Keep it
Yes,
moving.
yes, yes. That's the medicine for so many, that peace that doesn't depend on someone else's closure. It's always something in our hand too. So if you have to say something or give a message to my listeners, what would you say?
I would just say, like, you know, I think so much of what we've been talking about is what has to do with you and what
Mm,
has to do with them.
mm,
And keep your keep your intentions pure. Don't overgive. It's not necessary. Give people what they give you, but, like, start with the best of intentions. Don't start from a negative place of suspicion and jealousy and competition. Like, start from a clean place and watch people's energy.
mm.
Watch how they move and give them back that energy, give them back
Yeah.
that frequency. And then if people are behaving properly, exit.
Yes.
Quiet. You don't have to make it theatrical. Say your piece if you want, but exit. And just as long as, like, you are at peace with your own behavior and how you treated people, by and large, like, karma takes care of everything. You don't, like, don't get involved. Like, just sit back and watch. Like, keep it, like, focus on yourself, stay in your own lane, mind your business. and just like take care of the people who take care of you. There's so
Yeah.
much love in the world. Like you don't have to focus on like a handful of just like mediocre, bitter people. Like there's so much better ways to spend your time.
Yes, yes, yes. That's so true and that's wonderful. And if my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Yes. So I have my YouTube channel, which I guess I should have mentioned at the beginning. It's called Pieces of Miss Minnie. So Padmini is obviously my full name. So Minnie being the second half of my name. So Pieces of Miss Minnie on YouTube. I'm working on a couple projects, but that is that's basically a good way. And of course on Instagram, Pieces of Miss Minnie. And you can DM me, or as my videos go up, you can, leave me comments. I look at everything. So I hope
Yeah.
to see a few more faces.
Yes, yes. And I will make sure to attach all the details and links below so that my listeners can find them easily and get touch with you and listen more from you because you're a wonderful person and the way you speak,
Oh,
that's so nice. And with that, we have come to the end of the show. And to my listeners, this conversation reminds us that life won't always offer answers. But if it can still offer meaning, if you are standing in that in between space, know that you are not alone. Thank you, Padmini, for showing us the grace, acceptance. Until next time, keep walking gently with your unanswered question and trust that peace can still find you. Thank you.
yes, absolutely. Thank you.